Time now for 3 on 3, where we welcome two of the sharpest people we know to discuss three of today's most interesting stories. Joining us from Pensacola, Florida, he is the co-author of Air America, the Playbook, Mike Papantonio, co-host of Ring of Fire on Air America Radio. And in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the Reverend Joe Watkins, former aide to the first President Bush and campaign advisor to the current president. He's also a radio talk show host. Welcome to you both. First up, the fallout from the congressional page scandal. It's already cost Mark Foley his job, but now Republican leaders are deep in damage control mode, trying to save as many seats as they can in November. Is it a lost cause, Joe? It seems to me this could be worse than I first realized for the Republican Party if it turns out they were covering up for this guy.
Well, there are folks that are trying to say they were covering up, but actually there was no such cover-up. Everything that happened sounds appropriate and apt, given what they knew at the time. They had been told by the fellow that had gotten this page to work on Capitol Hill that there was some inappropriate communications between the page and the congressman, and folks were watching him, and they even warned him. They told him to stop. Now, that's about appropriate as you can find for a member of Congress doing that kind of thing. That is lacking any serious information about what he might be doing.
Yeah, but you know how these things go, though, Joe. I mean, look, because I know that, you went to boarding school, for instance, where this stuff, let's be honest, is pretty common, and everybody kind of knows who the creepy teachers are and the ones who prey on little boys, and his colleagues had some sense that this guy was doing that, and why didn't they, grab him by the throat?
Tucker, I don't know.
Tucker, they did the right thing. They did the right thing, and the congressman did the right thing. The congressman stepped down, which was the right thing to do.
For Reverend Watkins to defend this party is absurd. Let me just tell you what they could have done. They could have reported this to the Congressional Page Board. They knew about it a year ago. They could have reported to the House Ethics Committee.
Wait. I'm sorry, Mike. What did they know about a year ago? Wait, slow down. What did you say they knew about? What specifically did they know a year ago?
They knew that this is a congressman that had already been making inappropriate advances
Did they have evidence of that?
This was not guesswork. They knew that this guy had a problem. This is a man who sits as the chairman of the Missing and Exploited Children's Caucus. This is like a fat fox guarding the henhouse. And you know the problem with the Republicans? They don't have enough guts to police themselves. You know
what? You settle down for 1 second here. Hold on for 1 second.
Yeah.
You're saying a lot of really heavy stuff. And I want you to back up and substantiate the things that you are saying. I am willing to believe, I am open-minded, and I'm not a partisan Republican. And I'm willing to believe that the Republican Party covered up this man's misdeeds. But so far, you presented no evidence that that's true. Now, I read the emails.
Well, now,
let me finish. Slow down. You finish. You are responding to, I believe, the emails that have been public that they had access to that actually don't suggest he was molesting children. They're just kind of creepy. Are there other emails?
Tucker, you've read this. You've read it just like I have. Go to the internet, read what this pedophile freak was saying to this child.
No, but,
and you tell me
you're being disingenuous here. The first set of emails was not obviously sexual.
Politics at its best. This is partisan politics at its best.
Dennis Hassert has known about...
The guy did some inappropriate stuff. He sent some very inappropriate instant messages to a young page.
It's felony,
he resigned.
Watkins.
He resigned.
One at a time, guys.
Felony.
Okay.
Well, he's certainly going to be investigated, and I'm sure whatever happens that's appropriate criminally will happen, and that's fine.
Reverend Watkins,
but to suggest that beforehand...
All right, gentlemen, we're going to move on to something that may elevate your blood pressures even higher. Donald Rumsfeld, he repeated yesterday that he will not resign his job as defense secretary. But in his new book, Bob Woodward writes that President Bush was advised to fire Rumsfeld back in 2004. Now, what about Colin Powell? Doesn't he deserve the blame for supporting a war he never believed in? Which seems to me, Mike Papantonio, an interesting question. Here you have a guy who, according to Woodward's book, knew from day one that this war was most likely a bad idea, and yet went before the United Nations and sold it to the rest of us around the world.
At least you see Colin Powell acknowledging the fact that he became a UN pitchman for a lie. He became a media pitchman for a lie. But now Colin Powell, now what's become clear is Colin Powell, just like a half a dozen other generals, have told Rumsfeld, we don't have enough troops on the ground. 50,000 troops more at the very least was needed. Rumsfeld's credibility has always been in question. He's been called indecisive. He's been called dishonest. He's been called manipulative, not just by Colin Powell, but by the very man that Joe Watkins worked for, which is W's dad. W's dad wanted nothing to do with Rumsfeld because he didn't trust Rumsfeld for the very reason that most military advisors don't trust him. He is a political operative. He's not a general.
It's interesting, though. I'm a little bit confused as to why, and I've said this before, Rumsfeld, of all the people responsible for this debacle in Iraq. Why is Donald Rumsfeld taking the brunt of the blame for it?
Bob Woodward is trying very hard, of course, to sell books. He sold a lot of books over the last 2 decades, of course, and anytime he comes out with a book, especially a book that comes out maybe, a month before the key November midterm elections, of course, whatever he says is going to be carefully examined. You've got to consider here some of the allegations and then the truth. That one of the allegations in the book is that Andy Card somehow or another led a group of people, was leading the parade to have Rumsfeld fired. That's not true. The president hears from his chief of staff. No, it's not. The president hears from his chief of staff and from other advisors on a regular basis about who they think ought to stay, who they think ought to go. And Andy Card, and I know because I worked with Andy Card in the first Bush White House, is about as straight a shooter as they come. He's a guy that has no hidden agenda, no ulterior motives, except to serve the president of the United States and the people of the United States. And so Andy Card, in his position as chief of staff, certainly shared with the president what some people were saying, but he by no means led, as the book tries to imply, some kind of a movement to dump Donald Rumsfeld.
Well, you know, it's a funny thing. It's a funny thing. The Republicans loved Bob Woodward when he came out with Bush at War and when he came out with Plan of Attack. The truth is, you almost can't believe Woodward. I have to agree with that. All Woodward's doing right now is positioning himself because he sees a shift in power taking place in Washington. He's got it cozying up to the Democrats now. He cozied up to the Republicans with his 2 books, Bush at War and Plan of Attack. Now we're seeing a side of Bob Woodward where he's maybe telling us what he's known all along, and that is that generals that really understand war have never stood behind Rumsfeld. They think he's incompetent. They think he's dishonest. They think he's indecisive. Right. Now, unfortunately, W embraces all that.
This has been quite a day for allegations of cover-up of sexual abuse. Here's another one. The Catholic Church furious about a new BBC documentary that accuses the current Pope, Pope Benedict, of once overseeing the cover-up of child sex abuse claims. The church calls, quote, false and misleading the report that says then Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger was in charge for 20 years of enforcing a secret document that lays out procedures for dealing with child sex abuse within the church. The BBC says it stands by its program. Joe, what do you make of this? It seems to me potentially damning here. We know for a fact that the current Pope was in fact in a position to oversee the response to child sex abuse, and the church covered it up. I mean, does this strike you as damning, this documentary?
Well, the Pope, I think, is making a real effort to try to overcome some of the past ills of the church, and there's been, at least certainly in recent months, a lot of transparency on the part of the church with regards to dealing with the issue of some of the child abuse that took place in past decades. But to try to paint this Pope in a negative light because this is one of the areas that he oversaw, think about this. Here's a guy who served for decades before being elected Pope last year, and they're trying to pin one little area that he ran on him for all the past child abuse that went on in the Catholic Church. It's not really fair.
Let me tell you about some of that abuse, so we don't lose sight of the ball.
We know there's abuse. No, there's no doubt about it. There definitely was abuse. No doubt about it. But to try to pin the Pope is not fair.
If I can be heard, last year in Philadelphia, a grand jury came up with these stories. An 11-year-old girl who was repeatedly raped by her priest, and after she became pregnant, took her to an abortion clinic. A 5th grader who was molested in a confessional. These are stories that this Pope Benedict has had to stand behind. And let me tell you what he did.
Wait. Now you're making me sympathetic to the guy by your overstatement. Back up. What do you mean this Pope had to stand by? What do you mean?
No,
he in no way endorsed that abuse?
No, of course he didn't. But let me tell you what he did. He engineered a program that said this: if a member of a congregation or a witness broke the oath of secrecy on this type of pedophile activity, they would be excommunicated from the church.
We know that that's what the oath said, Mike, but is he the one that engineered it? Come on, let's be real now.
Wait a second. He signed off on it. Reverend Watkins, he signed off on it. You know what? That's enough for me. Here's a Pope Benedict. While he signed off on this, he knew that pedophiles are incurable. I used to be a prosecutor. I know how dangerous these people are. 250 Catholic clergy have been accused of child molestation since 1950s. Pedophile priests are moved from one congregation to the other without members in that congregation ever knowing that there's a criminal pedophile in their midst. This is a church that spent $70 million just in the last 10 years trying to make this go away. These people, these pedophile priests work in orphanages, they work in Catholic schools, and you know, the best thing the Catholic Church can do is say, okay, enough is enough, let's do the right thing, let's get rid of these criminal pedophiles. And you know what? Pope Benedict has not helped that mission.
All right. Joe, Mike, I appreciate you both coming on. Thank you.
Thanks, Tucker.
Thank you.